let's talk about Guy de Maupassant. I mean, the undisputed king of the short story. In just about a decade, this one guy created this torrent of masterpieces that really defined the art form. And that brings us to the big question, the one we're going to tackle right now.
So, how did he do it? It wasn't some kind of magic, and it wasn't some inaccessible, born with it genius. No, Maupassant had a method, a repeatable, learnable system for seeing the world and turning what he saw into incredible fiction. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. The secret technique that allowed him to be not just brilliant, but, wow, incredibly prolific.
And when I say prolific, I really mean it. Think about this number. This wasn't the result of a long, leisurely career. Maupassant wrote the bulk of these stories between 1880 and 1891. That is a staggering creative output. A pace like that doesn't come from just sitting around, waiting for inspiration to strike. It comes from having a process you can trust, day in and day out.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at where he found his stories. Then we'll dive into the 80-20 secret of his technique, and we'll break that down into 3 really practical steps. And finally, we'll wrap it all up into a simple framework that you can actually use yourself.
All right, first up, the master of the mundane. See, Maupassant's genius wasn't about dreaming up these fantastical, otherworldly plots. Not at all. It was in his extraordinary ability to find the drama, the humor, and the tragedy that was hiding in plain sight, just in the everyday lives of the people all around him.
And here's the key thing to get. He wrote what he knew. As a young man, he was a soldier in the Franco-Prussian War. After that, he spent years as a government clerk in Paris. And he grew up in the countryside of Normandy. These experiences weren't just background noise for him. They became the actual raw material for his art. He painted this incredibly rich picture of 19th century French society because he had literally lived inside it at almost every level. Okay, so how did he transform that raw material into art? This is where we get to the real heart of it, the 80-20 writing secret. We're going to focus on that 20% of his technique that delivers 80% of the impact. The vital few skills that really made his stories so powerful. So instead of getting lost in a bunch of complicated literary theory, we're just going to zero in on the highest leverage tools in his toolkit. The goal here isn't to become Maupassant, of course, but it's to learn the most powerful parts of his method that we can actually apply ourselves. So what is this secret? Well, the best way to understand his process is to think like a literary sculptor. For Maupassant, everyday life was like this giant, uncarved block of marble. It's full of potential stories, right? But they're hidden inside. The writer's job isn't to invent something from nothing. It's to find the story within the stone and then carefully carve away everything that is not the story. And this brings us right to our first step, observe and select. This is the sculptor walking around the raw marble, looking for the grain, the potential. For a writer, this means seeing the world with an intense, focused curiosity. Now, Maupassant learned this from his mentor, the great novelist Gustave Flaubert. And Flaubert's advice here was kind of radical. He didn't just say, look closely. He said to look until you find the one thing, the specific detail that makes a person or a place or even a fire unique from all the others. It's all about finding that one distinguishing feature. And this part is absolutely crucial. This isn't about just recording reality like a photograph, capturing every single detail. No, that's what the sculptor's chisel is for. Maupassant believed the writer has to select only the most characteristic details to create what he called an image more complete, more striking, more convincing than reality itself. It's reality but amplified through super careful selection. Okay, so once you've selected your details, you move to step 2, show, don't tell. This is where the sculptor starts to reveal the shape that's hidden in the stone. Instead of just telling us what a character is like, Maupassant reveals their nature through their actions, their words, and their reactions. This example from his story, Moonlight, just demonstrates the technique perfectly. He could have just told us, the priest was a misogynist. Simple? Sure, but pretty forgettable. Instead, he shows us. He has the priest constantly quoting Christ's dismissive words to women. He tells us the priest hates their bodies and their loving hearts. We don't just know he's a misogynist, we feel the chilling depth of it. Now that's the power of showing. And finally, we get to the last step in the sculptor's process, that final polish that makes the whole surface gleam. For the writer, this is all about precision and economy. It's about making every single word pull its own weight. This quote from one of his translators just captures the challenge perfectly. The short story form has absolutely no room for waste. The goal is maximum impact with minimum words. Every sentence, every phrase, it has to contribute to the overall effect.
And Maupassant was an absolute master of this. His prose was famous for being clear, concise, accurate. It was even described as being like a pool of transparent water. He believed in finding the one perfect word, not a handful of pretty but kind of imprecise ones. This linguistic discipline, that's the final polish that makes a good story truly great.
So, let's put it all together. These 3 steps, observe and select, show down tell, and make every word count, they form a complete framework for storytelling. It is the method of the literary sculptor.
So here it is, the complete sculptor method. First, you observe the world around you to find your raw material, your block of marble. Then, as a totally separate action, you select only the most characteristic telling details. That's you using your chisel. Third, you reveal the character and the plot through action, letting the story emerge from the stone. And finally, you polish your language until every single word is perfect. This is the engine that powered Maupassant's unbelievable creative output.
Maupassant proved that you don't need to travel to distant lands or imagine these fantastical worlds to find a great story. They're all around us, every single day in the lives of ordinary people. The only question is, are you looking closely enough? What story is hiding out there in your world, just waiting for a sculptor like you to come and set it free?